Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. This is Minerva Santiago, your elder law and estate planning attorney from High Springs, Florida. And Star Bradbury is here with me again. This is our third episode of a three-part series where we were talking about quality aging and creating a plan for it, and many other interesting topics related to it that are of interest to many of you.
We keep thinking about more and more things we want to share.
I know.
But we'll try to stay focused.
Yes, there's too many things to cover. So we'll try to do the best we can today since it's our last episode. And just to recap our last episode, we talked about how to begin the conversation of creating a plan. And we also talked about some legal documents that you may consider having as part of your plan, like a power of attorney, healthcare surrogate document, living will, possibly a trust. It just depends on what's going on. And those are really just pretty generic estate planning documents. And today we'll talk about a little bit more about different tools that you may need to use if you're trying to qualify for Medicaid. So I'll talk a little bit about what to do if you don't have a plan. So last session we talked about how to develop a plan, but today we're going to talk about what if you don't have a plan, how do you address that? And at the end, or towards the end, then Star will give us like her final nuggets as far as her expertise in her area that she practices in.
And this is a good time for me to throw my quote in.
Yes.
I've been wanting to use this quote. It's a great introduction to what you're about to share that's so important. So this is a quote that I really love because it summarizes something important. Long-term planning is not necessarily about making long-term decisions. It is understanding the consequences of your decisions today, or as we like to say, indecisions today, on the future you. Because everything we're talking about requires taking an action to put some of these very important medical and legal documents in place before a crisis when you start to lose options or lose control. So that's my little nugget there, because she's about to tell you the important things that you can do to help make a plan that to qualify to age successfully and have a quality of life.
Yeah. So I think we talked a little bit last time about what benefits would cover long-term care. So we established last session that Medicare does not cover long-term care.
No.
And if you're in a circumstance where you don't have long-term care insurance, typically you would default to Medicaid. So just to kind of recap that a little bit, if you're in need of long-term care and you do not have long-term care insurance, your possible resources to cover it are you private pay. If you are a veteran or your spouse was a veteran, you may be able to qualify for aid and attendance benefits, or that you have to qualify for Medicaid. And if you find yourself in that circumstance, the recommendation absolutely is to meet with an elder law attorney.
Absolutely.
If you're planning for anybody with special needs that's going to rely on Medicaid or any public benefits, or a senior that's going to need these kind of benefits, absolutely meet with an elder law attorney. Even if you're not, maybe you don't even intend to hire them, but just in the...
To educate yourself. Don't please,
yourself.
if there's one thing we would tell you, don't make assumptions. So many people I talk to say, oh, I'd never qualify, or I don't think I'll ever need Medicaid. But you really, how can you answer that if you can't see the future, right, and you can't predict the enormous cost of long-term care? Over $100,000 a year easily. So educate yourself now. Come and see Minerva. She's the expert.
Well, we're going to cover as much as we can today, but for those of you who are local, we do have an event next week that will go into more detail about all of the planning options with regards to Medicaid planning. And that's going to be on Tuesday, the 19th at a Grady House Bed and Breakfast, and it's going to be at 2:30 p.m. You can find more information on our website, legallyremote.com. But in any case, with regards to meeting with an elder law attorney, just educate yourself, because even in that one session, it'll be worth its weight in gold, but they will give you tips on what you should not do before applying for Medicaid. There's so many times I meet with clients who have already come to me when they've already made financial transactions that they should not have
Given
made.
money away.
Yes. So sometimes you can correct the transactions that have been made, other times you can't, and you find yourself in this big mess trying to fix it. But I did want to clarify some misconceptions that I hear often about individuals who need the long-term care with and pursuing Medicaid, but don't do it. And one of them is because a lot of people I've heard have a fear of losing their home.
Yes.
And there is something that's called Medicaid estate recovery. And so that is after the person who's on Medicaid, if Medicaid can go after probatable assets. They can't file a lien against assets that are in probate. However, if you meet with an elder law attorney, that can be avoided because you would create a plan. So that's just one of the things. Just because you are on Medicaid, that doesn't mean the family's going to lose their house. And the other thing that I have often come across is where individuals feel like because they have too much money in assets or too much income, they automatically assume there's nothing that can be done. And so they assume.
I see that a lot, Minerva.
Yeah.
I do.
And so they assume that they need to spend their money down until they're within the financial limits to qualify.
Right.
For some people, if that's what you choose to do, that's fine. But a lot of times what I see happening is it's a married couple, and then you're depleting funds that then you won't have anything left to care for the community spouse, who's the one that's the healthy spouse. So
and that's a big fear.
It is.
It's a big fear that couples have, especially if they already know that one spouse has a serious diagnosis and is going to need a lot of care. And that's why you want to try to plan in anticipation of the unknown. Yes.
So there are some misconceptions about Medicaid planning, and this is why we encourage you to absolutely meet with an elder law attorney just to get the right answers. If you can Google so many things and get inaccurate information, and it's just incredibly helpful if you meet with a qualified professional that can give you the right guidance you and your family will need.
So with the right planning, a couple could protect their house.
Yes.
With the right planning, they could protect assets for a surviving spouse or the spouse who remains in the home while someone needs long-term care that Medicaid would assist paying.
Right.
And for those of you who think I can just do this application myself, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they put in an application and it's denied, isn't there a rule about reapplying, cannot reapply for some amount of years? Is that a myth?
Well, usually there's the appeal process, and that in itself
But that takes...
Yeah, that takes an indefinite amount of time.
I've heard years. So, you want to make sure that if you're applying, that you're applying well ahead of a possible need.
Right.
That you do it right the first time.
Correct.
That you educate yourself and don't make assumptions.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you apply, you need to make sure you already have your financials in order with regards to meeting the eligibility requirements for Medicaid. And let's cover that really quick. So to qualify for Medicaid, the applicant cannot have more than $2,000 in their name. And as far as
in assets, total
assets in their name. And for income, gross income, they cannot have more than, I think it's $2,829 now. It just increased a little bit. Yeah.
So it's $29. Yeah. That off. Go figure.
But it's just over $2,800. So if you're in a circumstance where that's more than your gross income monthly, doesn't mean that you can't qualify for Medicaid. It just means that you need to plan to how you're going to see how you're going to qualify for Medicaid. And if you have more than $2,000 in assets in your name and you're the applicant, then obviously there are things you can do. So it's not
within the Medicaid rules,
within the Medicaid rules,
legal financial requirements.
Correct.
You can protect some of those assets or kind of remove them out of the application for the person who's trying to qualify.
Correct. Yes.
Well, and that's so important.
Yes. It is
Yeah.
important.
And people don't know this. That's why we're trying to
Yeah.
share. As I like to say, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so why try to make these critical decisions in the absence of knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
It can't hurt you to educate yourself.
Yeah.
Because I have met with people who say, we're comfortable financially. And I always want to say, well, how comfortable financially? Comfortable enough to sustain the cost of $14,000 a month for a private room in skilled nursing for 3.5 years, which is the average length of time that for men, it's a little shorter for women, might need long-term care. So before you say, Medicaid is not for me, I would ask you to really look at that those hard facts, and decide whether you might want to educate yourself well ahead of any crisis.
Yeah. And if you're a veteran, I highly encourage you to look into the possibility of receiving aid and attendance benefits. If you have a lot of medical expenses, there's the possibility that you could qualify for that. And
even if you're not career service, even if it wasn't a long-term career as a veteran or in one of the armed services, you still could qualify. And if you were married and your husband or spouse served and they've passed away, you may be eligible for benefits as a veteran spouse. Yeah. So don't again, find out what you're eligible for.
Yes. And what is nice about the aid and attendance benefits, which is different from Medicaid, is
through the VA.
Yes, through the VA, is if you have aid and attendance benefits through the VA, they distribute whatever amount you qualify for, they distribute the funds to you, and you can choose what facility you want to be in, or what kind of care you want to have. As opposed to if you're relying on Medicaid, for Medicaid purposes, you're very limited. If you're going to a facility, you have to go to a Medicaid facility. So having the aid and attendance gives you a little bit more flexibility, and sometimes you can even use both of them. So it's not like
I have definitely seen people take advantage of both veterans benefits and Medicaid.
Yeah.
And by the way, the federal government is well aware that our population is aging, and there are some significant increases that we hope to see in home and community services through Medicaid, because these baby boomers are like me. I think are turning 65 at 10,000 people a day, and so there's this tsunami of older baby boomers who are going to be needing care, and maybe some of you are in that category, or your parents are, and you're trying to plan ahead. And we're talking about the big ticket items to plan ahead.
Yeah.
Living wills, healthcare surrogates, power of attorney, everything that you've mentioned. Those are what we call the critical financial and legal documents.
Yeah.
But there are indeed more than those things to consider.
There are. So if we're in a circumstance where you have too much income or too many assets, I'll discuss a little bit briefly the different kind of tools that we use. So again, it depends on your circumstance if you're over income or over assets. And it also depends on family dynamics. But very common, we use a personal service contract to help us qualify, or help women qualify for Medicaid. We also use Medicaid asset protection trusts, which allow somebody to transfer assets to a trust, but you need to be aware that there is a 5-year look back period when using that.
Right.
So sometimes there are scenarios where it's appropriate to use it, other times that there's just not, because you need the care immediately. So that's
why you plan ahead.
That's why you plan ahead. It's an excellent tool if you plan ahead. We also use, there's spousal refusal is something that's commonly used, where it's when a spouse transfers, because if we're a married couple and let's say I'm applying for Medicaid, I need to get my assets under $2,000. Right. I can transfer the assets to my spouse, and that would not be penalized by Medicaid. I'm allowed to transfer.
Important to know.
But the community spouse needs to then declare that they are not going to be supporting their spouse. So a lot of people don't feel
Mhm.
comfortable doing that, but it is an option.
Well, but for those of you who say, I could never do that,
Yeah.
remember that in a way you're advocating for yourself so that you have assets to continue living comfortably,
Mhm.
and you're helping your spouse who may need the long-term care by allowing them to qualify for Medicaid.
Mhm.
And so I would say, sit with that before you make a final decision, because in the end it might be the best decision really for both of you. And there's no spouse I've ever talked to that isn't interested in doing what's best for their spouse,
Right.
that's still remaining in the community, may live longer, would like to stay in the home.
Yeah. Sometimes we also help families with, you can have income producing property. So if you have a large sum of money and you're over assets, you can purchase income producing property that will count towards your income, but at least it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish with regards to what you have. But that's an option as well. There's also Medicaid compliant annuities, which are
I hadn't heard of those.
an option. Yes, but they're
What are they?
So they're a Medicaid compliant annuity. Not everybody sells them. There's obviously specific companies that are familiar with the requirements for them, but it's a scenario where, let's say I am the community spouse. I am the one that's receiving the income from the annuity. But if I were to die, then there's a clause in there that would say that Medicaid can get the money that's in the annuity. So you only do that, it's commonly done. So if you're trying to get rid of a lump sum of money, or not have it count against you, you could put it in this annuity, which is paying out to the community spouse.
But when they pass away, it goes back to reimbursing Medicaid.
No, only if it's during the annuity period. If I were to pass away during that period, then, so that's why you only do it if the community spouse is healthy, there's no health concerns or anything. But
I didn't even know those existed. Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. And that's why you seek the advice of experts who understand the nuances and all the options without and looks at your individual situation and can advise you on what's going to work best for you, whether you're a solo senior or you have a spouse or children. Well, it can be complicated, but
it can.
That's why you want to get the answers ahead of the crisis, ahead of the need.
Right. Yeah. And let me think. We also do pooled trusts. Are you familiar with pooled trusts? Okay.
I think a little bit, but not like you.
Pooled trusts are managed by nonprofit organizations, and it's like a special needs trust, where there's one blanket agreement for sub-trusts, and putting that money in that type of trust, the assets don't count against the individual because they're in this first party. They're in a pool trust, which the funds can only be used for the benefit of the applicant. But upon the applicant's death, whatever the remaining balance is in there, then Medicaid can have access to putting a lien on it.
So it's a way of protecting assets to take care of the special needs person while they're alive. And make sure that money is utilized only for that person.
Correct.
But should that person, or not should, when that person passes away, then that money could be used to, in a way that's fair. I think I totally understand the reasoning behind that.
And we also, if we look at the family dynamics, if there's anybody that has special needs children, and like in my circumstance, if I needed Medicaid and I needed to get rid of assets, I could transfer as much as I want into a special needs trust for my son, and that would not be penalized by Medicaid. That's an allowable transfer. So,
well, I think the important thing for everybody listening, no matter what your interest in this topic is, you never know. You may have loved ones or family members who are in a situation where they're taking care of a special needs child, or someone else within your family that, gosh, I talk to so many people who are worried about their sisters and brothers, who may have disabilities of one kind or another, and they're trying to look out for them. Well,
So I know that's a lot of information, but that's just giving you some ideas on different options that are available for planning. So never think that if you need to qualify for Medicaid, it can't be done. We can help qualify on the financial side. Now, we can't do anything about your health. You actually have to meet the health requirements to qualify for Medicaid. But so that's all I really felt like I needed to cover as far as the legal information. I just needed to get all of that in there. But as far as Star,
it's a lot. It's a lot of information.
We need Star's final nuggets on
my
aging,
final
quality
nuggets.
aging. Yeah.
Well, just like we've been preaching about planning ahead for the unknown, I would like to encourage everybody out there, since we don't know what the future holds. I always like to say never. What do I mean by that? So here are some of the phrases I've heard from many families over the years. I am never going to leave my home. Okay. I am never going to move into one of those retirement communities. Although usually when I ask, have you visited any of those communities? The answer is no. Or, that's just way too expensive. Have you ever been? No. Do you have the pricing information? No. So my take on this, even though I know 99% of all people want to age in place, I will tell you right now that that is a statement. It's not a plan. When people say, I'm going to age in place, I will ask them, how strong is your personal support system? How strong is your a system, professionally or personally, in terms of aging in place? Now, if you have a strong knit family, you have adult children who are willing and able and capable to support you as you age, that is fantastic. But I also talk to so many people who do not. And so if you fall into the category of, no, I don't really have a great personal support team, then either you need to make a plan to pay for long-term care, home care in your home should you ever need it. Again, that's also expensive. Or what I would like to suggest is, before you rule out living in a community, I would suggest go visit. Go visit the upscale retirement communities that might have a lot to offer you. Because I think you need to ask some of the tough what if questions. What if I couldn't drive? Well, that would significantly impact your ability to stay independent.
Right.
But if you live in a community that provides transportation, then that solves that issue and you can continue being more independent. What if you lost your spouse? Would you be isolated and lonely? Or if you're already a solo senior, staying in your home may not be a good plan. Mm-hmm. And what I'd like to encourage people is to think about making decisions against principle number 1 in my book, which is, how can I maximize and prolong my independence for the longest possible time? Now, that may not be staying in your home, even though I think people conflate that. As long as I stay in my home, I'll be independent, but that's just not true. Yeah. I've gone into so many people's homes when I did assessments, when I ran an assisted living facility, and they were lonely and alone, and COVID kind of taught us that. Yeah. You know, the how seriously harmful it can be for a senior person to become isolated, which kind of brings me back to my nuggets here. And that is that part of aging successfully and having a quality lifestyle are more than just the legal and medical documents. Those are pieces of paper, very important pieces of paper. But what would I throw in as we wrap this third session in?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes. I'm on a roll.
Before you leave the aging in place topic,
yes.
As a aging
life care specialist.
Aging life care specialist.
Thank you.
How can you help individuals who are adamant that that's what they want? How do you help?
So here's what I would say, and really somebody in that capacity could help in a variety of ways. But so I am a member of the Aging Life Care Association, a national organization called the Aging Life ALCA, ACLA, and it's a wonderful organization that can provide someone who can help you maintain your independence. How? by helping you navigate the very complex world of senior living, home care, even your own health care, especially if you don't have a good, strong personal support team. This person can be your, so I like to say, the daughter you don't have or you wish you had. And of course, I say daughter. There are men in ALCA as well. But most of the people in the Aging Life Care Association, many of them are certified care managers. So they would be able to be your personal healthcare advocate, help you communicate with your doctors, help you make decisions about, let's say you had surgical options and you were trying to decide what's right for you. They are highly educated. Many come from either the RN background or the nursing background. Some come through masters in social work or the licensed clinical social workers. But you can go to the ALCA website, put in a zip code for anywhere in the country, and pull up a 25-mile radius of that zip code, 50-mile radius of that zip code, and see what members within the national organization are available to you. They'll list their names, their bios, their educational background, whether they're more medical, if that's what you need, medical assessment. But they are not the person going in and helping with activities of daily living.
Right.
They are a highly skilled professional who are helping you oversee, coordinate, manage senior living, senior healthcare, home care. And so somebody like that could assist you in aging in place if you don't have someone on your personal support team that can help coordinate, oversee, and advise. And I'm a huge fan of that organization for those reasons.
Right. It sounds
Thank
like
you for
an excellent
asking.
resource.
It is. It's a wonderful resource. And what I'd like to say is when you're considering your options, instead of saying I'll never leave my home, because I've had people say that and then call me a few years later, well, things have changed.
Yeah.
And maybe, life is full of change.
Right.
I'm going to look at these other communities in my area, or maybe if you're thinking about relocating closer to a family member or an adult child, then go look at the retirement communities in that area. You might say, and I hear this a lot, well, I don't want to live with my kids, but I wouldn't mind living near them.
Okay.
Well, go look at active, wonderful retirement communities. There's so many options out there now. And I did want to mention this. I was telling you before we started. There's new research as of March 4th, 2024, done by the University of Chicago and the National Organization of Independent Research that says that seniors that live in active retirement communities live longer, get better health care, and are happier than if they age in place in their house. So I personally am a fan, as you age, of not necessarily staying in your house unless you have those strong family and community connections. Because being in a community that is supportive, I'm talking about independent living. I'm not talking about assisted living, where there's ideally great food, transportation, all your maintenance, your housekeeping is done, all kinds of activities, because that's all part of aging well, having a quality lifestyle.
Now, can you, I guess, distinguish, or is there a difference? There's a lot of communities that are just over 55 communities. How does that differ from what you're describing?
Well, thank you, because there's a big difference. I have nothing against the over 55, but my preference, if someone's going to move, why not find a community that is what I call a full service retirement community or a life care community? Very different. Those are two very different things. Full service retirement community is what I was sort of mentioning. It's going to have lovely dining rooms, probably multiple dining rooms with meals there, and you have your own apartment, you have your own kitchen, but you don't have to cook every meal if you don't want to. You might say, well, I do my own breakfast and lunch, this is what I hear, but I go down to the dining room and join my friends for dinner. It has housekeeping. It has all of your utilities included, so it minimizes having to pay a lot of bills.
So is this
Something
the life care?
breaks. No.
This
Well,
is-
actually, everything I'm saying would also apply to
Okay.
life care.
Okay.
And the big difference between a full service retirement community, which has a monthly fee that's going to cover all your utilities, your dining, your housekeeping, all maintenance, 24-hour security. It's what I call extremely supportive environment that allows you to age in independent living. And a full service retirement community might also have some assisted living or some memory care, but not always. Generally it might, but that's a separate contract.
Okay.
It's nothing that's included or part of.
Okay.
Whereas a life care community, which by the way is complex, and a lot of people have misconceptions about a life care community. If you can afford a life care community, I am a big fan. Why? Because only in a true licensed CCRC, that's what they used to be called, continuing care retirement community, now called a life care community, you have to pay an entry fee. What is an entry fee? Well, it's kind of like my quick summary is paying an entry fee, Minerva, is like buying a lump sum long-term care insurance plan in one lump sum. And they do vary, but there's an entry fee. What does that entry fee buy you? It buys you guaranteed access to assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing, should you ever need it. It's all right there on the same campus, ideally. Now, the question is, does that save me a lot of money? Usually it does. Every contract is different. I always joke, the longest chapter in my book of 20 some odd chapters is, what is a life care community? Are they worth the high cost? And I would advise anybody seriously considering a life care community to read that chapter and educate yourself. Nevertheless, I'm a fan because there's no other community that I've come across that guarantees that access at a discounted rate, depending on what kind of a contract you pick.
Right.
And so it checks a lot of the boxes.
Okay.
So somebody could be in independent living,
Right.
and their spouse that turns out needs assisted living long-term or needs skilled nursing long-term can access that. But you're in the same community.
Right.
You're not separated.
Okay. So I know
It's a long answer.
we only have a few minutes left, and I did want to make sure that you covered what questions individuals should be asking when they're touring different communities and facilities.
Well,
and I know they probably vary depending
they do vary. And I think that it's important to start out with the really critical questions like, could I see your contract? How strong are you financially? And you want to ask those questions, and I would call them tier 1 questions. Who owns this community? Are you not for profit? Do you separate out ownership and management? Meaning you could have some huge corporation own the facility, but they've hired someone else to manage that facility. And I'm not a fan of that arrangement. It's much better to find a community that both owns and manages and is invested in the welfare of those residents and patients. And so I will tell you that I've posted a lot of those questions when touring any kind of retirement community on my website for free under resources. What questions to ask when touring assisted living, skilled nursing, full service retirement communities, life care communities, because we're running out of time. My website is www.starbradbury.com.
Yeah.
So please feel free to look at that. A lot of the questions are in the book, but just to help people make educated decisions, they're on my website as well.
Yeah, good. Would you be able to tell us with regards to the community you were describing when you talked about this large amount of money you'd have to?
Yes.
Can you give us
Yes,
estimate?
yes, I'd be happy to. I would say that nationally, the average for a life care community entry fee is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $350,000 and up. That amount is low for our local life care community here. But I would tell you that if this is a concept you like, call, get the information, look at the different contract options, and see what works for you.
And that's just the entry fee.
That's just the entry fee. The monthly fees are going to be somewhere between $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. But remember now, that's all utilities, most of your food, and all your maintenance, and a lot of things are wrapped into that. Also, that monthly fee is not. It also would apply to a full service a full service retirement community. So. But if you went and made a list of all of your expenses,
Yeah.
That you have in your home,
Yeah.
your home insurance wouldn't need it, maybe even your car insurance, if you were relying on their transportation. It starts to add up.
Yeah,
and it makes financial sense for some people.
It does.
Just never say never.
Yeah, never say never. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This was our last episode. As you know, we want to remind you again about an event we're having next week on Tuesday, March 19th. Is it the 19th? It is the 19th. At 2:30 p.m. It's going to be at the Grady House Bed and
Where is
Breakfast.
the Grady House? Downtown?
It's actually just down the street. No, it's
it's out here.
It's in High Springs.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
It is. You haven't been there?
No.
Oh,
I've heard
they
about
have
it though,
such a
actually.
beautiful courtyard, and the food she always prepares looks so beautiful and delicious. She's just, yeah, it's a
So
really,
it's in High Springs.
It is in High Springs.
Glad I asked.
Yeah, so it's really a nice location, and it's going to be. This is the first time we're doing an afternoon event, so it's going to be high tea and trust.
What time?
2:30.
2:30.
2:30.
Open to everybody.
Yes, but you need to register. Otherwise,
okay.
we may run out of room. So if you can register, that would be great. But in any case, we hope the information we've provided to you has been helpful.
It has been.
And if you have any questions, we both have websites. If you just want to shoot us a question that maybe we didn't cover or you're curious about, just feel free to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day.